For those of you that haven't met me before, my name is George Honiball. I'm currently based just outside of Reading, very close to Microsoft's head office in Thames Valley Park. So for those of you who have never heard of quantum computing, in a sort of very basic way, computing, if you've done sort of very basic computer science, you will know that the microprocessors that we work with started off dealing with little magnetic charges. So obviously for those of you who used to listen to tapes when you played music in your cars and that type of thing, that was a magnetic tape, and it basically had lots of little zeros and ones, and those zeros and ones were positive or negative charges. So it was as simple as that. In the same way, microprocessors and computers worked with bits and bytes that were a whole lot of series of zeros and ones, positives and negatives. And that is how classical computing has grown and developed. But if you think of it, if you were to try and create a picture using just black and white, this is what you're going to see. It's just, I don't know if you can make out, but it's a few boats in a river. But you can't really see any detail. You can't see the buildings. You can't even see gray with black and white. So even the grayscale effect doesn't work. And that's very much what classical computing is about. It's sort of very, very limited. It is not giving you the entire depth of what is possible with technology. So it has been a huge limitation, but we haven't really cracked the code with quantum computing yet in its entirety. So if we were to compare quantum computing to classical computing, quantum computing basically allows you to see all the colors of the spectrum. So now suddenly you can see a lot more detail in the picture. You can see the color of the water. You can see, oh, wow, this looks familiar. It might be in a place like Scandinavia, which it is. And it's actually a picture I took in Copenhagen a few months ago. Glorious sunshine. Not so gloriously sunshine there at the moment, but you can suddenly see a lot more detail, and that is what quantum computing is about. It allows you to see everything between 0 and 1. So instead of sort of the extremes of the 0 or the 1, positive or negative, on and off, quantum computing allows you to basically sort of generate information across the entire spectrum. So you can go from 0.1 to 0.01 to 0.5 to 0.5.1 to 0.0.0.0.1 to 0.99999 to infinity at the same time. And that's what a lot of people struggle to comprehend, is how can a 1 or a 0 or a 0.5 also be a 1 or also be a 0 at the same time. And that's what the theory of quantum physics was all about as well. And a lot of people struggle to understand the difference between quantum computing and quantum physics, but we'll get there in a few seconds. So the key thing to realize is that quantum computers, to solve problems, can explore multiple solutions at the same time. And that is the biggest differentiation between classical and quantum computing. Is classical computing is very linear. It will try to solve a problem with one go at a time, whereas quantum computing can try everything all at once until it finds the right result. Obviously, that has ramifications as we start using more advanced features. So just to quickly explain, quantum physics is very much the theory behind what is possible with quantum computing. So it explains what is possible, but obviously a lot of it is theoretical, and that is what we're struggling with at the moment as technology companies, is we're trying to build the theory similar, obviously, to going back to flight. I mean, obviously, in theory, some people said it's impossible for a body heavier than air to fly. But then they thought, but hold on a second, bees are heavier than air. Bats are mammals and they're heavier than air. Birds are heavier than air and yet they can fly. So clearly there is some kind of way to beat gravity and fly, even if you're heavier. Similar to ships. People knew that obviously if you put metal in a body of water, it's going to sink. But if you build it in a correct way, it can actually float on the water. So it's not that we're cheating physics and cheating the laws of gravity, but we're using it in our favor. And that's exactly what quantum physics is all about, is explaining at a very basic level. So you're literally working with atoms and electrons and photons, the tiniest level of detail to generate these transactions. We're going to get into superposition and entanglement in a few minutes, but basically these are key theoretical principles of quantum physics that we can apply now in reality using quantum computing. Also, we're about 100 years ahead. So obviously the theory of quantum physics was discovered in the early 20th century, so kind of been between 1900 and 1930 by people like Bohr. Obviously, Albert Einstein was involved and Heisenberg. And then obviously in the latest research, we're only in the last sort of 15, 20 years really starting to be able to unleash quantum computers and get results from them as well. In terms of coming back to a point I made a few minutes ago, so classical computing, if you give it this problem of how to get out of a maze, it would basically try one route at a time until it finds the best route to get out of the maze. Now, what a quantum computer will do is it will try all of the options all at once and then find the best one and use that one. So instantly, not just using all of them all at once, but also the best one. So there might be more than one way to get out of the maze. So the classical computer might find the first way, but it might not be the best way to get out of the maze, whereas the quantum computer will do that instantly. And when I say instantly, literally, it instantly gives you the result. There's no lag, no delay whatsoever. And that is what is so amazing. I'm going to share with you in a few minutes when they tried a trick that would have taken a traditional computer tens of thousands of years to calculate, and a quantum computer did it in a matter of minutes. So we spoke about entanglement. So another important concept to think about is something called superposition. So superposition allows what the computer does for entanglement in doing everything all at once. Superposition makes sure that it's relevant to that original use case. So, for example, if we were to try and give that maze, superposition makes sure that the quantum computing always remembers the original maze that we gave it. So we're going to get to agents in a few minutes, but if you remember, a key aspect of agents that I taught in the previous series is that you can start a chat with an agent and build a relationship with it and discuss a specific topic, then introduce a new topic, but at any time you can go back to that previous topic and continue that conversation as well. So that is what superposition is all about as well, is being going back at any time and recalling information as well. So obviously the more primitive agents, if you ask it a question, it's going to give you an answer. And if you ask a similar question again, it is not going to remember that you asked a specific thread. Whereas with the new agents and the new technology, it recalls all of that history. It remembers all of that past. So very important. Quantum computing as well. They're continually learning and improving and adapting and changing. And that's the key thing to realize as well. So I don't know if you guys remember the movie in The Matrix, but when Neo was fighting all of those evil agents, he was struggling in the end because they were able to learn and adapt and use the way he sort of was thinking against him. And in the same way, quantum agents over time are going to start learning and remembering things as well. In terms of complex problem solving, they don't do, as I mentioned earlier, one step at a time. They're able to do everything all at once. And that is a really important thing to remember. Also, in terms of optimization, cryptography, and simulation, it doesn't need to do it in a linear way. It can do it all at once. So, for example, if you're thinking about simulating weather, it'll be able to simulate multiple weather conditions all at once when you're trying to assess the impact that, for example, a typhoon would have on a building or a tsunami would have on a building. A quantum computer would be able to calculate all of that all at once and recommend how to build a superior building in future as well. Think of it in boats, think of it in submarines, think of it in multiple ways, and it really does happen. I mean, if you think a while ago, that tsunami that hit Japan, and it hit that nuclear power station and it flooded it, and it creates contamination and big problems. You would think in Japan they would know how to build a nuclear power station right next to the sea in a safe way, but obviously they weren't using a quantum computer to develop that. Stuart, I see you've asked a question. How would regular binary computer users protect themselves from security intrusions from quantum computers? So that is a really good question, and we will come to that in a few minutes. You see, I've just mentioned cryptography, but if you think of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, they use something called blockchain technology, which is there to help slow down and increase the security of how people can access and generate and transact on those currencies. If you have a quantum computer, you can break that cryptography in a matter of seconds. So it is a big risk, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, Stuart. It's a good question. We're going to cover it in a few slides. So in a practical world, coming back to that question about solving one problem at a time, think of companies like Amazon and Federal Express and Uber Eats. If you have multiple packages to deliver, so let's say you arrive with your Amazon truck, you have 20 parcels that you need to deliver. How do you decide in what order you want to deliver those parcels? If you only have one destination, it's very easy. You get in your Amazon truck and you find the best way to get there. You use an app like Google or Waze, and it'll direct you and take you straight there. Done. If you have two destinations, suddenly you need to think, hold on a second, which one is closer? Oh, there's a one-way road, so maybe I should rather go the other way before I get to that second destination. So immediately it starts adding an element of complexity. If you have three destinations, suddenly there's 6 different possible routes that you can do on. And then that continues to become something called combinatorial explosion, where as you add an extra destination, it has a significant impact on the number of choices that you make, to when you have 10 destinations. Just with 10 destinations, suddenly you have 3.6 million different possible routes. So you can imagine the complexity that these logistics companies face in terms of doing deliveries. And that's before we've even considered things like traffic conditions, delivery time windows. So it's no good if you plan to deliver something at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and you arrive there and they closed at 4 o'clock. You'd need to factor that into your calculations as well. Vehicle capacity. Do they need to stop along the way and fill up with fuel or charge their battery? Fuel costs. What is going to be most economical for you as well? Also having multiple drivers and weather as well. I see Renil was saying it's raining heavily in South Africa. So hopefully that's not going to impact your driving home, Renil. So please keep an eye on the road, and it's really good to have you here with us. So you can see this is a very practical example of where a quantum computer can come in and help you solve this challenge very quickly and very easily. So if you have 20 destinations to deliver, it's going to take decades for a conventional computer, classical computer, to be able to calculate the best route that you should take to make those 20 deliveries. In terms of other possible worldly scenarios where quantum computing can help us in future, think of energy. It's going to be able to optimize power grids. So make sure that you build a power station in the right area to serve different cities. Develop new materials. So, for example, help you to decide sort of, the electric power cables that we see, how thick should they be? Is sort of metal the right tool to use, and what type of metal should you use? So maybe create different alloys. maybe use lasers to transport it. Also, from a storage perspective, I don't know if you know, but if you store power, effectively you're sitting on a bomb, because obviously if that power is suddenly released, it could cause fire. So I don't know if you're aware of it, but a lot of the electric cars, if that battery catches fire, we don't have anything to put that fire out, because once you started that situation going on, the elements in the batteries just keep burning and burning and burning until they're all consumed. And that's why often a lot of cars, you'll see the little green line on the number plate to show it's an electric vehicle. So if it does catch fire, emergency services know that this is a serious problem. They might need to move the vehicle away from buildings that could also catch fire. So it is a huge challenge. So that is where we could definitely use quantum computers to help us, not just in terms of increasing the capacity, but also the safety of batteries as well. Also, many shortages. So, for example, lithium is in really short supply. Is it the best mineral to use in batteries? Maybe our quantum computers in the future will be able to find or even help us create better minerals to use for that as well. And then also, as we mentioned, transporting energy as well. In terms of financial services, obviously quantum computing could help with risk analysis, fraud detection, and investment. I'm going to get into it in more detail in a few slides, but for example, imagine having a live agent working to help you assess every single credit card transaction that's going through on your system. So whether you're a bank, whether you're a credit card company, it's really going to do a lot to help you with fraud protection as well. Also, from an investment perspective, being able to predict what's going to be happening in the markets. If there's a war in Israel and a war in Ukraine, how is that going to impact the market? Is it going to push the oil price up or down? Is it going to put the gold price up or down? What's going to be happening to companies that are manufacturing weapons? Are their share prices going to go up or not? When it comes to healthcare, we're going to definitely see a huge difference over here with quantum computers helping with research. Research is very expensive, very time consuming. As I mentioned earlier, quantum computing can do amazing modeling where it can look at the impact of medication on people, and instead of having to use people to test medication on, quantum computing is going to be able to do it theoretically and save a lot of time and money in doing that as well. Another really profound aspect of quantum computing is something called protein folding. I don't know anything about protein folding, but it is a big thing. But classical computers cannot do protein folding at all. That is something that only a quantum computer will be able to do. And then, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of transportation and logistics, quantum computers are really going to be able to impact the way we route information, the way we route goods and services. In terms of setting up scheduling, going to be able to do it much better. So we're probably going to have autonomous trucks driving around in the middle of the night when we're not using the highways, getting to work and back. And the autonomous trucks are going to be out doing their deliveries with robotic agents, accepting the goods, checking it in, refueling the vehicles while they're unpacking them. All of these things are going to happen autonomously in the background. So when we go to Pick and Pay or Tesco, everything is going to be there. Probably have agents and robots at night doing merchandising for us, restacking the shelves. It's not going to be people doing it anymore. Probably picking it and delivering it to our houses eventually as well, but let's not go there. In terms of who physically has a quantum computer at the moment, so I mentioned earlier that we haven't quite cracked the code yet. So obviously a lot of the big tech companies that are going to benefit from quantum computing, the typical big players, IBM has been around for a long time. They've been working on quantum computing for decades now. Google and Microsoft have entered fairly recently into that, where even Microsoft has developed its own chip for the first time. NVIDIA and Intel, Intel have been around for a long time as well. They're also really trying to get into that. I'm not going to go through the specialist and government agencies. Just to say one sort of really profound thing is that China at the moment is definitely in the lead when it comes to quantum computing. And we need to think quite carefully about, from a risk perspective, What are the implications of that for the rest of the world if China does create the first proper, fully functional quantum computer? How is that going to impact elements of security and safety, cryptography, cyber security, all of those types of things? It really is something that we need to think about. You see, I have a big but there. And obviously that big but is because nobody actually has a fully functional quantum computer that works the way the quantum physicists theorized quantum computers should work. So they can run some algorithms, but they've got something called noisy intermediate scale quantum. So what that means is they're not able to operate at a quantum level, so right down to the little atom level without there being any noise. So what that noise typically is heat that is causing problems. So obviously the atoms will vibrate, and that causes noise and confusion, and that leads obviously to the quantum computing not operating at the level at which it should. I'm going to share with you in a few minutes that quantum computers actually operate at conditions colder than outer space, because obviously you need to have those cells, those atoms operating sort of with as little energy and noise as possible. So really getting into the technical nitty-gritty over here. I see Reno has asked a question, which data quantum computers would use for analysis and developing solutions? So we're going to get there in a few minutes in terms of tangible ways that we're going to be using quantum computers in the future. So as I mentioned, there is a race on the go at the moment. So this is not just the technology companies that are doing it. There are countries and governments that are in the race as well. So I've already mentioned China. Obviously, that is going to have a profound impact on system security and cryptography. Stuart asked a little bit earlier about things being broken, and literally a lot of security. Think of passwords, for example. If you have a password of 20 characters, it's going to take a traditional computer a lot longer to come up with all the different variations on what your password can be compared to just 3 characters or 4 characters. And that's why often when you do internet banking, initially you only needed 4 characters. Now suddenly it's going to say you need a minimum of 8 characters. That's for security reasons. But if you have a quantum computer, it's going to instantly be able to come up with what the password is. So it's going to be able to get into your banking and start sending money all over the world, putting it into sort of Bitcoin accounts that nobody can access and things like that. So it really is a concern. I've mentioned blockchain and crypto. Also from an arms development perspective, it could have a profound impact on global communication. A lot of the communication we do at the moment is through satellites. Imagine if you can use quantum computers to hack into the entire terrestrial network, all of the satellites out there, sort of set them off course or take over control of those. Immediately, you're going to get amazing power and huge blackouts to the rest of the world as well. In terms of weaponry as well, coming up with new weapons, finding ways to disable or override other weapons of competitor nations, for example. There's so many sort of horrible ways that you could use quantum computers as well. Even in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, drug discovery and research, a lot of trials will be reduced in terms of time and complexity and cost, being able to create personalized medication. So a quantum computer would be able to, for example, do a blood test and find things for you that are particular to you. So literally, a quantum computer would be able to build medication for you, matching your DNA that you'd be able to take that is unique to you. So it will know exactly what is going on. It will be able to calculate and see if you're at risk of heart attack or pulmonary or heart disease or those types of things, and give you medication custom built for you. And obviously the ramifications of that are people are going to be able to live a lot longer because they're going to be eating healthier. The exercise that they're going to do is going to be right for them. Obviously, the quantum computing will be able to look at your build and recommend specific sport for you. So I've got big feet, so I hate running, but put me in a swimming pool and boom, I'm away like a speedboat. So obviously those are the types of physiological things that quantum computers will be able to build into the recommendations for you that a normal sports psychologist or personal trainer would never be able to do. I see Thomas asked questions. Greeting all, policy development analysis and research. Not an IT specialist, but interested in developments. I can absolutely tell you, Tom, even the current systems like OpenAI and Copilot and Perplexity, you're able to upload PDFs or Word documents, legal documents, and ask them to have a look and recommend anywhere in the document where there are possible loopholes, where there are possible areas that are not clearly defined, where they might contradict each other. It really is wonderful. So I actually encourage you to upload a few of your existing policies or documents and ask these agents to have a look and see if they can find any areas where it could be improved, even things way beyond just typos and spelling mistakes and grammatical errors. It can actually understand the content of what you're doing, and even for example, being able to compare the documents of different companies, to example. So if I have a will at Standard Bank versus a will at First National Bank versus a will at ABSA, what are the strengths of the different wills that have been written, and also what are the areas of weakness that need to be improved as well? And that is currently available as already. So I really do encourage you to try that out and let us know how you get along. So physically, what does a quantum computer look like? So as I mentioned earlier, we're working at an atomic and even at a subatomic level. So literally building atom by atom. So you see on the right-hand side here, I spoke earlier about the quantum chip that Microsoft has developed. So although you can see it being held in a person's hand, right in the center is that tiny little oval-shaped area. And that is where the quantum computing will focus a lot of its effort. So on the left-hand side, you see a very big contraption. Now, that is not actually the quantum computer. All that is coolant tubes. And I know about these coolant tubes because we're actually developing them in a laboratory in Copenhagen at the moment at the Microsoft office. And that laboratory went from being a tiny little area in an office, they've now moved to a completely different building. So that gives you an indication of how seriously companies are starting to take quantum computing, where in the past it was kind of a theory and it was speculation, whereas now it's becoming practically feasible. And a lot of the companies that I mentioned earlier, if you go onto their websites, they can give documented proof and evidence of the progress that they're making in developing these quantum computers. I mentioned a little bit earlier the fact that it sort of is operating sort of at temperatures colder than outer space. So the exact temperature is 273 degrees Celsius below zero. I cannot even comprehend how cold that is. I mean, I was in Zurich and it was -10. I've had friends and colleagues that have been to Canada where it's been -20, -30. I have a colleague who grew up in Russia and it got to -40. I cannot understand how cold -273 degrees Celsius is, but that is the challenge, is getting these processes down to that temperature. And to be able to do it for a long, sustained period of time is very, very difficult. I mentioned that really quick transaction that happened. So actually, it would have taken a classical computer 10,000 years to do it, but this Google quantum computer did it in 200 seconds. It did that calculation. In terms of qubits, so the qubit, obviously they're operating at an atomic level, so you can use these qubits in many different ways. So we're way beyond using mag tapes and sort of hard drives, and even the sort of classic spinning hard drives that we used to have. Now we've got the solid state hard drives. We're moving away from that, where you can use superconducting circuits, you can use photons. I don't know how this is possible, but apparently even defects in diamonds can be used as qubits. So it's very, very interesting. So interesting, Stuart. So what's interesting with this, and now we're getting very technical, is in terms of binary scaling, so you would typically go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32 to 64, similar to what we've done with our chips. And if you've ever used little external hard drives, remember we had 1 gig and then 2 and then 4 and then 8. Quantum computers, it is exponential. So you can literally go from 1 to 8 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 1,000,000 to 1,000,000,000. That is how quickly quantum computers can scale. And as I mentioned earlier, the algorithms that we have in place that enable us to do a lot of encryption, immediately the quantum computing will be able to override those. I'm not even going to say in seconds, because it will be able to do it instantly. So what we're starting to develop now is something called post-quantum cryptography, where we will be using quantum computers to help us set up a new level of cryptography. Now, obviously, we use cryptography not just to log into computers, but for banking, for communications, for security reasons. I mentioned earlier satellites, power stations, networks. So think of rail, think of road. All of those are using cryptography and security at the moment. So if you don't have that in place, it exposes you to huge risk. And I'm sure you've heard of situations where, for example, Russia have been trying to get into networks in the US, for example, to try and control dams. Because you can imagine if you suddenly open the sluice gates in a dam and flood cities, how dangerous that is going to be. So you need a lot of security in place. So this is the huge risk that we're facing with quantum computers. So what is an intelligent agent? So we've been talking about quantum computers. In my previous session, I was talking about agents and AI. So what is an intelligent agent? So an intelligent agent is an agent basically at a new level. So the intelligent agent can be autonomous or semi-autonomous. So that means it'll operate completely by itself, or there might be a human or another agent controlling what they do. So the key thing about these super agents is that they can perceive their environment. So we'll be able to give them data. So you can imagine robots of the future that are going around doing the deliveries. So as you know already, with Tesla cars, a lot of them autonomous, they drive around, but they've got very, very advanced features that can view. So they've got cameras and sensors around to view what's going on around them, to make sure that they don't crash into other cars, crash into pedestrians, crash into people in bicycles, and they can even start predicting what is going to happen as well. So if they observe a car moving towards them, they will slow down to try and accommodate and make sure that they don't crash into that other motor vehicle. In terms of reasoning as well, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it will be continually learning and improving as well. So it will apply that reasoning, and you've heard of large language models. Those large language models basically educate the agent in terms of what they're thinking and what they're doing. And the amount of time and money spent in training these LLMs has taken months or years to do, but that is coming down significantly now, where some of the newer LLMs are being trained up in a matter of days or weeks, and we will see that continuing to happen. All of the reading material that's available to us, all of the music that's ever been created, all of the movies that have ever been made, well, most of them probably are being converted to digital formats, and all of those are being stored and input into digital media. So that is going to create the brain, basically, of what these quantum computers are going to use to help these agents, because obviously we work in Earth. So you'll see a lot of the robots that are being built, for example, at the moment, They sort of are built to look like humans or other creatures similar to dogs. So I don't know if you've seen some of the sort of new robots that have come out that look like dogs. They run around on all fours. They can go up and down stairs. They can jump over things. So we haven't gotten to the stage where quantum computers will be able to come up with completely new designs. So we won't even have drones built like spiders or built like dragonflies. It's going to think completely out of the box. So at the moment, I think a lot of the AI inventions have been limited by our creativity. These quantum computers and agents will not be limited by our worldview. They're going to be able to come up with brand new and build new ways of doing things, and come up with new technologies that we cannot even begin to comprehend and think. I think the key thing to realize as well is we're definitely going to be getting past where we're going to be using agents and robots to just handle very repetitive tasks. So we're not going to be using them to just put cars together. We'll be using them to design new cars, come up with new ways of testing how to make a car more aerodynamic, more fuel efficient, coming up with new batteries even that we can use to make sure that cars are going further and further and further. And you can see how China are using it at the moment. So I don't know if you've heard of the BYD electric vehicles, but they can charge in half an hour. And at the moment, the main competitor, Tesla, I think the equivalent battery is going to take about an 8-hour charge for what the BYD battery takes half an hour to charge. So already you're starting to see exponential shifts in that. I mean, even phones on batteries in our phones are still very primitive compared to what is going to be happening in future as well. I'm conscious of time. I'm just going to speed up a little bit. So what will the experience be like for us? So when we talk to an agent, first of all, it will be video. So for those of you that have tried the chatbots and you start typing in things and then the chatbot thinks for a few seconds and then answers you in writing, it's not even going to be a chatbot in terms of typing. It's going to be a live video agent that you'll be able to talk to, and it's going to look real, it's going to look beautiful, it's going to look completely authentic. So you eventually will not even be able to tell the difference between a real agent and a fake or a computer generated agent. So they will be context aware, they will retain past interaction. So if I phone Standard Bank, for example, following up on a query that I've had, the agent will instantly know everything that I've discussed previously with the Standard Bank agent. It's going to remember everything and be able to give me an update in real time on the progress of my issue that's going on. It's going to be multi-skilled as well, so it's going to be able to do many things at once. It's going to be decision-driven as well, so it's going to be able to analyze data and weigh up options. So, for example, it's going to be able to read my tone of voice. It's going to be able to look at my face and look at my tone, look at my mood. It'll be able to pick up and see if I'm looking sad. So if, for example, I'm phoning to inquire about a funeral policy of somebody who's just recently been deceased, the agent is going to pick it up by looking at me, by hearing the way I'm talking and looking at my facial expressions. And then it will be able to adapt and be more empathetic, be more gentle with me. If I start getting angry, it's going to sort of adapt and sort of change the way it's interacting with me as well. So really, really taking the agentic experience to a new level. Also, a lot of these agents you'll be able to integrate with your ERP system. So if you have a customer relationship management system in place, for example, if you have an HR system that's got all of your people data, you'll be able to connect that and bring that on. So if you're phoning in to your HR department to find out about your policy, it's going to know everything about you. It's going to know which country you're operating in, which city you're operating in, which service provider you've chosen. So we as Microsoft can choose who we want to buy our Microsoft shares through. I don't even need to tell the agent. It's instantly going to know which service provider that I'm using. Also, it's going to be collaborative. So it is going to be able to engage and use other agents or even interact with other humans. So as you know already, if an agent is not up to the task, it can refer you through to another person. In the same way, you're going to see agents working with humans, working with teams, working with other people to solve problems and help come up with new ideas. So very briefly, and hopefully it comes back to the question somebody asked a little bit earlier. I can't remember who it was that asked, but basically what you're going to be doing is, for example, contract analysis. So agents will be able to look at contracts and make sure that they are solid, that if there are any risks in the contract, it will flag it and suggest ways to improve the policies in the contracts as well. So obviously from a risk perspective, it's going to reduce your legal exposure significantly. From a procurement perspective as well, it's going to be able to procure goods and services in time to save you from having to spend too much and have to do inventory control and stock control and have warehouses filled with goods that you're not using. In terms of fraud detection, we spoke about a little bit earlier for credit card fraud and those types of things is going to make significant differences over there. We've spoken about R&D already in terms of being able to simulate experiments instead of having to physically do it. So I spoke earlier about sort of making more aerodynamic vehicles. You're not going to need these rooms where they blow smoke over the car to see what are the impact of sort of air and drag on motor vehicles. Your quantum computers and intelligent agents will just know. They won't even need to do that anymore. Can the agent take notes? So a few months ago, I spoke at a conference and it was to company secretaries, and somebody said to me, can an agent take notes of meetings? And my heart broke because I thought this person, God bless them, they're not seeing the potential of the agent. Agents are so much bigger than just being able to take notes in meetings. So I helped Copilot draw up these examples of what this person was kind of asking. So basically, it's like asking a Michelin star chef, can you boil me an egg, please? I mean, yes, a Michelin star chef can boil an egg for you, but you're completely underutilizing that chef's skills and expertise. In terms of quantum computing and agents, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of processing video and audio, it's going to pick up on context, pick up on languages, pick up even on, for example, dialects and things like that. So I think that's one amazing benefit I've seen, is that it is not reducing and trying to make everybody talk English with business. It respects culture. It respects different languages. It respects different religions. It is amazing how it operates that way as well. Also, in terms of nuanced decision-making, because of the element of superposition, it's going to always be able to give contextually appropriate responses. So if I mentioned earlier, if you start getting angry and agitated, the agent is going to be able to respond appropriately. So it's not going to lie down and allow you to kind of take advantage of it, because obviously it represents an employer, but it's not going to agitate you and escalate the situation, as might happen with real world examples with agents.
George, we literally have 5 minutes left. Huh?
Yes,
I know.
I know. I'm just trying to see if it's possible for me to respond to the long question that Tom asked a little bit earlier. I'm just going to flick through. So I think obviously, as I mentioned, the misuses are there: breaking encryption, mass surveillance, manipulating markets and social media, being able to develop new and harmful weapons, finding vulnerabilities we've spoken about. Another thing is that the quantum computing will be able to make the actions untraceable. So they basically, as they make footsteps, they're going to be able to wipe their footsteps behind them. So you will never know that you've been hacked.
But it is interesting, George. It's funny. We all look at the bad things. Think of all the good things it could do too. I mean, maybe that's what some people should focus on that a bit. Because if they can think of all the bad things, we must be able to do a lot of good things too.
Absolutely. And these are the good things, as I mentioned, about technology, about coming up with new medicine, helping us with our logistical problems as well, even weather prediction and things like that.
Yeah.
It's really going to be amazing because it can instantly look at the global map and see what's going on as well. So just closing thoughts. So the convergence is coming fast. So it's not there yet. We don't have fully fledged intelligent agents or proper operating quantum computers, but we're probably, I would guess, 2 to 5 years away from that. Early movers are going to shape the rules. So as with anything, the early adopters are the ones who can set the pace, but they can fall out of pace very quickly. I mean, think of BlackBerry, think of Nokia, think of the photocopiers. A lot of the people that ruled no longer are in control. So it's not a given, but it is important, I think, for us as well. Try and embrace the technology, use it, try out all of these different things. Don't be scared to try it out, see where you can build agents and AI into your business. Try and create a chatbot, even if it doesn't work great. Try and do something. Don't be stuck to one tool either. Try lots of different tools as well. Go on and ask what are the main ones, and Google will be able to tell you. Obviously, you learn from making mistakes. Ask for help. I mean, we're here with the South African Chamber with people with great experience that can help you. I encourage you to read further, get training, whether it's formal or informal. There are wonderful YouTube videos out there. And then talk to others as well and try different tools. I mean, this is the prompt. Create an image of a Michelin star chef serving a boiled egg. Look at how Copilot, ChatGPT, and Perplexity came up with completely different images.
That's amazing.
Even here, create an image of an expensive grand piano being used in a completely wasteful way. Copilot gave me a Steinway piano, amazingly, without me telling it to. The ChatGPT one didn't catch it that great as kind of a guy watering a plant in front of the piano, so kind of missed the brief there. But Perplexity was brilliant. It came up with using the piano as a table to eat.
I'd love to try that with Grok. I think Grok would be interesting.